The Toronto Police Service will not tolerate acts of violence, intimidation, or hate toward anyone or any community.
Documenting a dramatic rise in hate crimes since the war in the Middle East broke out.
Tonight, new insights from Toronto's police chief and the ongoing patrols to keep people safe. Good evening. As efforts continue to get desperately needed aid to the people impacted by the war, we're learning about safety concerns here at home.
Toronto police say hate-motivated crimes have jumped since the deadly conflict began.
CTV's Beth McDonnell joins us live with the details.
Michelle, hate crimes were already increasing here in Toronto before the war began, and now we're seeing a further spike. Despite warnings, hate will not be tolerated. Since the Israel-Hamas war began, Toronto police say crimes are on the rise. Toronto's Jewish and Palestinian communities are not just feeling panic for loved ones overseas.
But they are also fearful for their own safety here in our city.
Toronto police say since the war broke out, the daily average of hate-related calls for service has increased 132%. In 2021, between October 7th and 19th, there was 1 incident. In 2022, there was 5. This year, almost tripling to 14. Of those 14 incidents, anti-Semitism was to blame for 12, with 2 related to anti-Muslim or anti-Islamic events.
Hate isn't just a problem for the Jewish community in Toronto, it's a problem for our entire city.
At the UJA Federation of Greater Toronto, Noah Shack works on countering anti-Semitism and hate. Last year, police found hate crimes targeting the Jewish community were among the most common types reported. It has been 1 week since police set up 2 command posts so they could be easily reached by communities and take reports. Shack says people are grateful for the police response.
No one should fear sending their kids to school because of the potential of somebody doing a horrific act. Nobody should fear gathering together to pray or to play in their communities.
Last week in North York, a hate crime investigation was launched after a threat at Tannenbaum Community Hebrew School. A day earlier, anti-Semitic graffiti appeared in another Toronto neighborhood. On Tuesday in Pickering, police say a man ripped a Palestinian flag off a vehicle and left a note with an offensive message.
Muslim women being spat on the streets, or students feeling the sense of unbelonging.
Fatima Abdallah is with the National Council of Canadian Muslims. She says the community wants to see more action to stop hate crimes because acts of hate can turn violent, citing the Quebec mosque shooting and the terror attack on a London, Ontario Muslim family.
Canada in itself is the leading of all G7 nations in Islamophobia-related deaths. And that's not a stat that we can be proud of.
She says clearly this is a problem that needs to be resolved. That incident in Pickering happened in a driveway, and police say the homeowner confronted the suspect and a struggle ensued. And it turned out that the victim ended up with an injury to his hand. As for here in Toronto, Toronto police say they're going to keep measures up, like the command post that I'm at tonight. There's 2 of them, one at Lawrence and Bathurst, another at Lawrence and Glencairn, as well as heightened security at places of worship and schools. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. In the Middle East, there are indications the expected Israeli ground offensive in the Gaza Strip may not be far off.
But tomorrow, there may finally be help for so many civilians trapped in the Palestinian territory in need of food, medicine, and other essentials. CTV's Heather Wright reports.
Essential supplies from food to water and electricity are running out in Gaza. The shelves at local markets becoming more bare by the day. If we continue living in these circumstances, Gaza will transform into a mass grave, this merchant says. But humanitarian aid may finally start moving in. It's expected the closed Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza will reopen Friday, allowing a convoy of roughly 20 trucks loaded with aid, including 5 from the WHO filled with medical supplies, to start rolling in.
We need those security guarantees so the supplies can be delivered where they're needed most.
It's estimated more than 100 vehicles are waiting to deliver humanitarian aid and are stranded at the border. Volunteers are ready whenever the trucks can move. We've been staying on the border crossing for 3 days, this volunteer says. We are insisting on staying until this aid crosses. The United Nations believes there are now 1 million internally displaced people in Gaza. In the south, people fleeing from the north on Israel's instructions are now sheltering outside a UN facility. Not far away, explosions today sent people running as an Israeli airstrike hit what Hamas media says was a house, killing several people and injuring others. Video shows many trapped beneath the rubble. There is no safe place, none, said this man.
And you can't help but wonder what's to come. Heather Wright joins us now from Tel Aviv. Heather, as the airstrikes continue, there are new signs Israeli troops are about to move into Gaza. What can you tell us?
Well, there has been a general deployment to this area for the last week and a half, but you're really getting the sense that something might be more imminent. Both the defense minister and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu were down visiting with soldiers near the Gaza border and, saying you might soon see the inside of Gaza, encouraging them, wishing them well, saying that they're fighting for the future of Israel. So when you hear those words coming from those leaders, you really do get the sense that perhaps a ground invasion is imminent.
Heather, it's now been yet another day where humanitarian aid has been sitting idle at the Rafah border crossing. We saw that in your report. Might it really actually open tomorrow? What details have you learned about that?
Well, Egyptian security is on scene. They say that they are going to open that border crossing at some point tomorrow. We don't know exactly what time that might happen at, but there are still a number of things that do need to happen logistically, how that convoy of trucks is going to move into Gaza, but some of the important details have been ironed out. There's going to be a UN flag that's flying at the border crossing. We are going to see UN inspections. We are going to see aid distributed by Egypt, the Palestinian Red Crescent, and the United Nations. And this is in order to ensure that that aid gets to civilians and not to militants. And that was a key stipulation by Israel when they were negotiating all of the terms of opening up this border crossing, is they want to ensure that there's nothing nefarious in those trucks and that all the aid is going to get to the people who need it the most.
CTV's Heather Wright live for us in Tel Aviv tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
The UK's Prime Minister was in Jerusalem today offering his support to Israel. Rishi Sunak told his Israeli counterpart, Britain is standing by Israel in its darkest hour. Sunak acknowledged the shocking scenes in recent days, including the aftermath of that explosion at a Gaza hospital. He later traveled to Saudi Arabia, encouraging the kingdom to use its influence to stop the war from spreading. In Ottawa today, the Prime Minister said what's happening overseas is having an impact on a lot of Canadians here at home.
The thing with this horrific situation in the Middle East is that it's not just happening over there. It's having an impact, a deep, direct, personal impact on individuals, on families, on communities here in Canada. Everyone is in agreement that the deaths of innocents in that hospital in Gaza never should have happened.
Justin Trudeau says Canada is taking necessary time to look at everything before drawing any final conclusion about what happened. Hundreds of people were killed in Tuesday's blast at the hospital in Gaza City. Hamas, which Canada has declared a terrorist organization, says Israel is to blame. The Israelis say a rocket from another Palestinian militant group misfired.
Members of our armed forces have been deployed to assist Canadians in the event the war between Israel and Hamas spreads.
But out of an abundance of caution, we have also deployed Canadian Armed Forces members both to Beirut and into Cyprus, so that we will be ready, should it be necessary, to take additional actions in order to assist Canadians to get to a place of safety. There are a very significant number of Canadians currently in Lebanon.
Ottawa is advising against all travel to Lebanon because of a deteriorating security situation due to civil unrest. It also warns that commercial travel may be impacted if the conflict intensifies.
Meanwhile, several Canadian families left the West Bank today. They received assistance from Canadian authorities working in Bethlehem. Global Affairs says 117 Canadians in the Palestinian territory have made inquiries seeking assistance, most related to options for departure and the overall security situation. There are just under 450 Canadians registered in the West Bank and Gaza. The government is advising against all non-essential travel to the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and Israel. Still to come tonight, another teachers' union votes in favor of a strike, monitoring the negotiations as parents and students brace for a disruption in the school year.
But first, let's have a live peek outside this hour as we anticipate a shift in the weather we've been enjoying this week. The cloud cover certainly is building and rain is moving in. The skyline's still looking nice. Lindsay Morrison is here with the current conditions. Dry for now.
For now, Michelle, as we make our way into the nighttime hours tonight, we will have a steady rain develop for us here in the GTA, and then it's going to be generally unsettled through tomorrow, possibly into the weekend as well. So that's a look at the satellite and radar. Winds right now are coming out of the south. They're not particularly strong. We are benefiting temperature-wise from that southerly flow. In fact, we made it to a high of 16 degrees today. We're at 15 right now, still holding on to 16 in cities like Burlington and Oakville. Overnight tonight, we're only dropping to a low of 12. That's our average daytime high at this time of year, but it is going to be unsettled. Coming up, we'll take you through the weekend forecast. Wet, windy, and eventually a cool down. That's all ahead. Michelle, for now, back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, another education union has voted in favor of strike action. This time, the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association.
Come just a day after elementary school teachers said they're ready to walk the picket lines. The labor unrest leaving parents and their kids worried about what the school year may hold. CTV's Allison Hurst joins us with the story. Allison.
Parents we've been speaking with today say they want their kids to stay in the classroom and that they are concerned about any time they're out of the classroom because of disruptions they've had in the last few years. As parents drop their kids off at school, many worry about a potential teacher strike.
And me and her mom both work, so I honestly don't even know what we would do.
You just give them what they want.
Negotiated, done, has to be on the table, and kids has to go to school.
Today, the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association voted 97% for a strike mandate.
97%, I mean, it doesn't leave any doubt that the minister needs to spend more time working at the bargaining side of his efforts.
It's the second union to vote in favor of potential job action.
Clearly, our members are running out of patience because the students' needs are so great and their needs are so great.
Yesterday, the Elementary Teachers Federation voted 95% for job action.
And I'm now urging OECTA and ETFO to get to the table. The truth is, families want stability. They deserve stability, and our government is going to deliver that.
The Ontario Secondary Teachers Federation is the only one of 4 main teachers' unions that agreed to a deal to continue talks until October 27th before sending any remaining items to an arbitrator.
If it's good enough for public English high school teachers, why isn't it acceptable for public English elementary school teachers or Catholic teachers?
We are not high school teachers. We have very unique issues that our members have given us that they need us to address.
Cassandra Knox says her daughter is behind in school.
She was in school during COVID and she spent a lot of time out of school, and since starting school she hasn't had a consistent school year.
She wants teachers to get what they're asking for, but hopes it doesn't require a strike. Just because there have been these votes in favor of strike mandates, that doesn't necessarily mean there's actually going to be any job action and picket lines. The Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association says that they still have days at the table to negotiate on the books this month, and they're willing to go into November. And as long as things are progressing, then there's not going to be a need for any job action. ETFO has a negotiation day on the books for tomorrow, and then another one scheduled on the 27th. Reporting live, I'm Allison Hurst. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thank you, Allison. Toronto police are searching for a suspect after a hit and run in Scarborough sent a pedestrian to hospital with serious injuries. This happened last night at around 11:15 at Kingston Road in Midland. Investigators say a black car and a white SUV collided in the intersection. Afterwards, the car continued westbound and struck a 22-year-old man before allegedly driving away. The pedestrian was rushed to a trauma center in life-threatening condition. Police are asking anyone with security or dash cam footage to get in touch.
And a man is in hospital after this single car crash last night in Brampton, which left the vehicle lying on its roof. This took place around 9:30 near Airport Road and Queen Street East. Reports from the scene suggest police may have been pursuing the car before it crashed, but they haven't confirmed that detail. Peel paramedics said they transported one person to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
At Queen's Park, an NDP politician under fire over her comments about the Israel-Hamas war is fighting back.
Sarah Jama has served the premier with a cease and desist notice, saying the comments he made about her were defamatory. CTV's Siobhan Morris joins us now. And Siobhan, this all comes as the legislature debates a motion to censure her.
Well, that debate has been very heated, with both sides of the House calling on the other to bring down the temperature. But now it seems possible that all the harsh words being levied at Sarah Jama could move from the legislature to a courtroom.
This is a very sensitive subject.
As MPPs weigh shutting down her ability to speak in the legislature, Sarah Jama has served the premier with a cease and desist. It's over this statement in which Doug Ford writes that Jama has a long and well-documented history of anti-Semitism and says she has publicly supported the rape and murder of innocent Jewish people. Jama's lawyer says those words have done serious harm to her reputation. They want a retraction and apology in 7 days, or they're threatening a libel suit.
Not only do I agree with the Premier, but thousands of other people have agreed with it. If Ms. Jama has an issue with that, then she can come into her place here and speak as opposed to hiding.
At issue is Jama's pro-Palestinian social media post, which has been described as anti-Semitic. Jama has apologized, condemned Hamas, but tacked the post to the top of her feed. Jama is with her family as her political future is debated.
Speaker, the member for Hamilton Centre is an anti-Semite.
The statement is a window into her mind and into her heart, into what she really thinks about terrorism and feels about Jews like me.
That is totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable.
The NDP leader doesn't see that Jama addressing her colleagues would help.
The way they have been talking about the issues in there is so deeply offensive to so many Ontarians. I mean, I don't trust them. I don't trust them to treat her with the respect she deserves as an elected official.
Today, progressive conservatives and liberals voted to condemn Hamas and recognize Israel's right to defend itself. New Democrats chose not to vote because the government wouldn't let them add language to call for the release of hostages.
The protection of all civilians in accordance with international law, an end to the siege and bombardment of Gaza, and for humanitarian aid to reach people urgently. The government blocked that motion.
Debate on whether or not to censure Sarah Jama will pick up on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, and it may come to a vote around noontime right after question period. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thank you, Siobhan. And staying at Queen's Park, Ontarians will soon get an update on the state of the province's finances. The Ford government has set the date for its annual fall economic statement, Thursday, November 2nd. Finance Minister Peter Bethlen-Falvey says the update will come just days before he launches a pre-budget consultation process. The province will hold in-person town halls and accept feedback online from people, organizations, and businesses about what they'd like to see in the 2024 budget.
There are renewed calls tonight to help refugee claimants seeking shelter in our city.
It's been months since the federal government promised money to help, but there's been no sign of that funding, and people are still sleeping in church basements and on the streets. CTV's Natalie Johnson reports.
As refugees in search of safety continue to arrive in Toronto, more and more are told the city's shelter system is full.
We are still turning away people in shelters, and that's a desperate situation.
Desperation that grows with every passing day. It's been 3 months since Ottawa promised Toronto $97 million for interim housing for asylum seekers, and the city's still waiting for the funding to flow.
They'll get the money. It's there. It's earmarked for them.
But even when that check is cashed, City Hall says it's not enough. $200 million is needed to cover 2023 refugee costs, $250 million required for next year.
Will the Liberals step up and provide the funding required to the City of Toronto so that no one has to sleep or die on the streets this winter?
The immigration minister today insisting the province sought to open its wallet.
The government of Ontario is sitting on billions of dollars that it could rightly allocate to tackle this problem, but we need to work together to do it.
Now we keep hearing it is that person's problem, it's the other person's problem. That does not bring a solution for us.
Ottawa has been busing some refugees out of Toronto to cities with more capacity. In the meantime, as many as 300 people are turned away from the shelter system every night, forced to sleep on the street.
A majority of those people are people from African descent who are not really familiar or well suited to be in this sort of climate. So I'm very troubled by that.
The urgency is increasing as the weather gets colder.
Oh, absolutely. We have started opening. We will be opening when the weather gets cold, warming center, respite center, but that doesn't solve the problem. They need shelters, they need housing.
A need that shows no sign of slowing down, with 4,500 refugee claimants expected to require shelter in Toronto by year's end. Natalie Johnson, CTV News.
A global security alert has been issued for Americans overseas amid the war in the Middle East. The U.S. State Department says there are increased tensions in various locations around the world and a potential for extremist attacks and violence against Americans. Tonight, U.S. President Joe Biden will deliver a primetime address. He's expected to outline what is at stake around the world and how that connects to the lives of Americans.
Dozens of Canadian diplomats have now left India.
41 Canadian diplomats and their 42 dependents were in danger of having immunity stripped on an arbitrary date, and this would put their personal safety at risk. The safety of Canadians and of our diplomats is always my top concern. Given the implications of India's actions on the safety of our diplomats, we have facilitated their safe departure from India. This means that our diplomats and their families have now left.
The move comes after New Delhi said it was stripping diplomatic immunity for all but 21 of our diplomats. As of tomorrow, relations between the two countries deteriorated after the Prime Minister accused the Indian government of being involved in the murder of a Canadian Sikh leader in BC.
Canada's Auditor General says efforts to address the growing threat of resistance to antimicrobial drugs is inadequate.
While the Public Health Agency of Canada released a pan-Canadian action plan on antimicrobial resistance in June 2023, I am concerned that it lacks critical elements like concrete deliverables, timelines, ways to measure progress, and clear roles and responsibilities for each level of government.
Without those elements, Karen Hogan believes it is unlikely the plan will result in any progress. She says health officials have been slow to implement changes that could improve access to antibiotics of last resort. Canadians don't have access to 19 of the 29 drugs in that classification. The AG also found refugees face the longest immigration application wait times, and efforts to combat racism in the public service are falling short.
A summit of Caribbean leaders wrapped up in Ottawa today.
In times like these, it is so important that we strengthen our relationship with friends and like-minded partners.
Key topics on day two included boosting trade and opportunities for Canadian investments in the Caribbean. Prime Minister Trudeau also reiterated the need for the global community to deal with Haiti's political class. There's concern a gang crisis will destabilize the region. Kenya is preparing to lead a military intervention, and the RCMP will likely send officers.
The headquarters of next year's Paris Olympics have been raided again. Prosecutors are looking into suspicions of favoritism, conflicts of interest, and misuse of funds in the awarding of contracts. They are zeroing in on about 20 of the many hundreds of business contracts that have been signed. The headquarters were first searched in June. The Paris Organizing Committee says it's cooperating fully with the investigation.
In Poland, a man's been arrested after pretending to be a mannequin. Now that's him on the right, standing in front of a store window display. With a bag in hand, he stood motionless until the shopping mall closed. He's accused of then stealing items. Police say the man posed as a mannequin in an attempt to avoid detection by surveillance cameras, but he was eventually spotted by security.
Well, it's a pivotal time for bears, stocking up for the winter ahead. So that may explain the actions of this brazen Bruin. It was caught on camera raiding the fridge of a home in Connecticut. And the hungry animal hit pay dirt. Security video captured it pulling out some lasagna before making good its escape through a kitchen window. We were saying earlier, a little Caesar salad with croutons and some garlic bread, and this bear would be all set. Now, in all, this furry intruder spent more than a half hour in the house. The owner was surprised when she got a notification from the camera because no one was supposed to be home at the time. See ya. Well, coming up, feast your eyes on this. All new fare for you to down when you're at a Leafs or Raptors game. The culinary experience aimed to spice up the fan experience.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, are you satisfied with your bank? A new survey finds many Canadians are growing frustrated with rising bank fees, interest costs, and a decline in customer service. They feel banks could do a lot more to help you save money. I'll have my reports. That's just ahead.
A hurricane warning is in effect for Mexico's Baja California Peninsula, where Norma is expected to make landfall on Saturday. Meanwhile, Tropical Storm Tammy will impact the Lesser Antilles tomorrow, along with other portions of the Leeward, Windward, and Virgin Islands. And then it's going to make its way back out to sea. Now, we are making our way through this list of Atlantic names. If we see storm development beyond Whitney, the World Meteorological Organization actually has another curated list. It's going to be used this year in place of the Greek alphabet. Coming up, we'll talk about the active weather we are in for tonight and through this weekend. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
New survey of Canadian banks finds many Canadians feel they could be doing a lot more to help the customer's bottom line.
Higher interest rates, mounting debt, and rising bank fees have many a lot less satisfied with their bank than 1 year ago. Here's Pat Foran and a Consumer Alert. Pat.
That's right, Michelle and Nathan, thank you. The survey by J.D. Power found more bank customers are concerned about fees, fraud, and fairness. Many Canadians are under financial pressure and say their bank could be doing a lot more to help them if they're having a difficult time. Canadian banks make billions of dollars a year, and a new survey on bank satisfaction by J.D. Power found many Canadians aren't satisfied with the service they're receiving.
About 30% of Canadian retail banking customers are dissatisfied with their bank.
When it came to Canada's Big Five banks, Bank of Montreal has taken over the top spot from RBC, followed by CIBC, Scotiabank, and TD Canada Trust. When it came to mid-sized banks, Tangerine took the top spot, followed by Simply, ATB, Desjardins, and National Bank. One of the biggest concerns for customers is rising bank fees.
We saw Canadian consumers report increased fees this year, ABM fees, overdraft fees, monthly maintenance fees.
When the survey asked how banks can better assist customers, 56% said they wanted alerts about suspicious activity, 50% information on how to reduce fees, and 35% advice to save money and earn interest. The survey comes after Canada's finance minister asked banks to do more to help Canadians with higher mortgage costs and rising bank fees.
Our objective is to protect Canadians by ensuring their financial institutions treat them fairly.
Just asking the banks to lower interest rates and fees isn't going to do much.
Consumer advocate Duff Conacher insists the federal government isn't doing enough to protect bank customers.
Customers recognize that they're being gouged and that the banks are adding on fees and hiking interest rates really quickly and sometimes excessively.
The survey also found Canadians' satisfaction with wait times and customer service provided by bank branches, online banking, and mobile apps also declined. The study is based on responses from almost 14,000 bank customers. And while many Canadians don't switch banks very often, the study shows there are differences. And if a bank can prove it has fewer fees and better customer service, it might be able to win over new customers. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
All right, to the forecast, we had another really nice fall day, but as you know, things are going to change.
Good thing, though, that it's taking a turn at the end of the day. Friday, it's fun no matter what, so who cares if we're getting some rain?
And technically, tomorrow we are still going to be mild. 16 is our forecast high once again, but yeah, condition-wise, it might look and feel a little bit different. We have rain moving in. We can already see it on the satellite and radar. Depending on where you're joining us from, you may have some wet weather outside your window already, and we're going to be dealing with this low pressure system for a couple of days. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Already getting a bit of a soaking if you're joining us from the shoreline of Lake Huron, as well as some southern portions of Lake Erie. We've got some wet weather moving through Barrie, north into the Muskoka region. And then for us here in the GTA, we're going to be dealing with wet weather at times this evening, but the bulk of this system is really going to move through overnight and then impact us with showers on and off through the day tomorrow. It's not looking like an all-day washout. Saturday, some areas might not get rain at all, but the potential is going to be there. Let me show you. Here's a look at the forecast radar. So that's around the midnight hour. Wet weather certainly around the GTA. And then waking up tomorrow morning, kids are going to want the rubber boots and the rain jackets before they head off to school or daycare. There's a look as we make our way through the afternoon. There are dry pockets. And then Saturday, notice a bit of a change as this low rotates. We could get into a few lake effect rain bands. It's going to be a mostly cloudy day. It's a 30% chance of showers for us here in Toronto. Little heads up as to what could be falling from the sky the closer you get to the Quebec border in through central Ontario. No concerns about wet snowflakes for us here yet, but it's only a matter of time, weeks at this point. Anywhere from 5 to 15 millimeters of rain is what we're forecasting here locally. I do want to mention the winds as well. They could be strong at times tomorrow, but it's into Saturday afternoon and possibly Sunday that they'll be particularly gusty. So a bit of a blustery weekend ahead. We're at 15 degrees still in Toronto, mild overnight tonight at 12 degrees. As mentioned, tomorrow is another warm day. We're above seasonal. 12 is actually our normal daytime high at this time of year. Noticeably cooler, though, by the time we reach the second half of the weekend. We're going to struggle to climb out of the single digits, maybe only 8 degrees in Toronto. Risk of frost into Monday morning. Monday's a beautiful looking day, though. Looks like the next soaker could move in through the middle part of next week. That's your look at the weather for now. Nathan, I'll send it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Still to come, new research on physical activity during the pandemic. Why adults seem to get moving and kids turn to their screens. The impact on girls and concerns over the long-term effects. That's after the break.
A new study is highlighting how people's physical activity and screen time changed during the pandemic.
And it appears the changes were most notable among girls. CTV's Amanda Klein explains.
When it comes to physical activity, according to recent data from StatsCan, adults over 65 started exercising more during the pandemic, while kids moved less, especially girls.
There's been a rebound in 2021 among boys, but not among girls. So boys have actually come back up in terms of their physical activity to a level similar to before the pandemic, whereas girls dropped their physical activity early in the pandemic and they kind of plateaued at that lower level.
The Canadian Women's Foundation says it's likely because girls were already less physically active than boys pre-pandemic, and it says the gender stereotypes that have contributed to that have continued.
In parks and in arenas, we can see access to hockey time and to baseball and to different forms of basketball, very much sports that are offered more typically to boys than to girls.
The study also looked at screen time, which was up for all Canadians. For children, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends limiting screen time to 2 hours or less per day. But for many, screen time more than doubled.
There was quite a big shift. A lot of kids went from that lowest category where we want them to be to that high category of 4+ hours per day of screen time. And in fact, it was slightly worse in girls.
Tech expert Carmi Levy says these high numbers highlight the need to understand the long-term effects of screen time.
We need to look more closely. We need to do more research. We need to understand what those impacts are. And as parents and caregivers, we need to start having those conversations with our kids about what balance looks like to them.
And one way to achieve that balance, according to this behavioral science professor, is starting with small changes.
So even if it's just things like taking a half an hour a couple of times a week to start with, where you do some activities that are away from a screen, doing, maybe some of that is physically active, maybe some of it isn't.
Tips to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Amanda Klein, CTV News.
For the third year in a row, a report on Canadian hospitals says there's been an increase in preventable errors in patient care. The Canadian Institute for Health Information looked at data on 2.4 million hospitalizations from March of 2022 to March of 2023. 6% of patients experienced what the report calls unintentional hospital harm. That includes incidents like infections, medication errors, and bed sores. The report noted the rate of harm increased during and since the pandemic as hospitals face staffing challenges.
The MTV Europe Music Awards have called off next month's ceremony, citing the unrest in the Middle East. The event was scheduled for November 5th in Paris. France is under a heightened security alert, and organizers say they decided to cancel the show out of an abundance of caution. They added, in part, the MTV EMAs are an annual celebration of global music. As we watch the devastation in Israel and Gaza continue to unfold, this does not feel like a moment for a global celebration. With thousands of lives already lost, it is a moment of mourning. Rapper Bad Bunny says he's going on tour next year. The Puerto Rican performer recently dropped an album whose title translates as "Nobody Knows What's Going to Happen Tomorrow." He's now going on the road with his Most Wanted tour, with dates across North America, including Toronto on April 4th. Like so many concerts nowadays, fans have to register for a chance to get seats on Ticketmaster. Bad Bunny wrote on his tour poster, "If you're not a real fan, don't come."
Taylor Swift has released a special thank you to her fans for launching her concert film to the top of the box office. The singer shared a live recording of Cruel Summer, the opening number in her Eras tour shows. Swift said she hopes fans could listen and relive the experience. She added in part, "What a truly mind-blowing thing you've turned the Eras tour concert film into. Thank you so much forever. Wow, just thank you."
Canada Post has issued a new stamp honoring the career of Canadian actor Donald Sutherland. The movie poster-inspired stamp features an image of the actor's profile with several of his movie titles in English and French. The prolific performer has appeared in nearly 200 feature films and television programs over 7 decades. Sutherland was born in St. John, New Brunswick, and studied engineering and drama at the University of Toronto.
Stars Tonight is brought to you by Last Man's Bad Boy. Who's better? Nobody.
After the break, Canada's highest honor in athletics. A new class of our country's best inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame, receiving the coveted Order of Sport.
On the next CP24 Breakfast,
Olivia Chow marks 100 days as Toronto's mayor, and we'll sit down with her to look back and look ahead.
That's on the next CP24 Breakfast, up first at 5:30.
The Toronto Police Service will not tolerate acts of violence, intimidation, or hate toward anyone or any community.
Updating our top stories, Toronto's police chief says the number of hate crime calls has risen since the Israel-Hamas war broke out. Over the past 2 weeks, police say they received 14 hate crime reports compared to 5 over the same period last year.
We need those security guarantees so the supplies can be delivered where they're needed most.
Calls for humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip are growing as water, food, and electricity are running out in the region. The closed Rafah bridge between Egypt and Gaza is expected to open tomorrow, which would allow a convoy of about 20 trucks loaded with supplies in, with dozens more stuck at the border awaiting the go-ahead to enter and help.
And me and her mom both work, so I honestly don't even know what we would do.
Another education union has voted in favor of strike action, this time the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association. This comes just a day after public elementary school teachers voted 95% for job action.
Canada's competition watchdog says the competitive environment in this country has worsened over recent years and consumers are paying the price. BNN Bloomberg's Jacqueline Hansen has the details.
The Competition Bureau found that competitive intensity in Canada has worsened across all the indicators it tracked. Why does that matter? Well, it says more aggressive competition among companies leads to more innovation, more choice for consumers, and lower prices. The Competition Bureau gathered data from 2000 to 2022. It looked at concentration, so when a few big companies earn a large share of total sales. It found the number of industries that are highly concentrated increased, and where concentration was already high, it increased more. It also found that the top firms in an industry tended to stay at the top, and fewer companies are entering industries and challenging existing companies. It says if a business feels challenged, it's likely to innovate and try to keep prices low to win over customers. Instead, the Competition Bureau found that both profits and price markups have risen. Let's take a look at some of the closing market numbers for today. The Canadian dollar is trading lower just a hair to a little under 73 cents US. West Texas Intermediate oil gained $1.10 to roughly $88 US a barrel. And Western Canadian Select gained almost $2 to about $66 US a barrel. As for stock markets, the TSX declined 101 points to end the day at 19,348.81. That is the latest in business. I'm Jacqueline Hansen of BNN Bloomberg.
Porter Airlines is launching another new route. The company will start direct flights between Pearson Airport and Las Vegas in March. This follows another expansion to the western U.S., with flights to San Francisco and L.A. beginning in January. Porter has been adding longer distance routes from Toronto as it ramps up operations out of Pearson.
After City Council put a cap on the number of rideshare licenses issued in Toronto, a new industry-funded poll suggests residents aren't in favor of the idea. Uber shared a plural survey of 675 adults. 93% of monthly rideshare users were concerned about an increase in both prices and wait times. Uber and Lyft have shared similar critiques. Toronto has about 52,000 licensed rideshare drivers. The cap was included in a motion mandating zero-emissions taxi and rideshare vehicles by 2031. Well, they've won multiple Olympic medals, Canadian and World Championships, so this was just a matter of time. Scott Moore and Tessa Virtue are now Hall of Famers.
It's an incredible honor. I think we're both a little bit at a loss for words, but representing Canada was the greatest privilege of our lives, and it was never lost on us just how lucky we were to grow up in the Canadian sports system. So to be a part of this esteemed group is quite surreal.
Canada's ice dance duo was inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame today. They are among 11 people awarded the Order of Sports, the country's highest sporting honor. Other recipients include mixed martial artist Georges St-Pierre, the Furby 4 curling team, and Paralympic bronze medalist Danielle Pierce.
Just ahead, enhanced flavor to enhance the fan experience, courtesy of some of the best chefs and restaurants in the city. MLSE unveils mouth-watering new food options at Scotiabank Arena.
Tonight, a lesson in freedom of expression.
Universities should be the places that ask the hard questions.
How the Middle East crisis is turning Canadian campuses into emotionally charged political flashpoints. Later on CTV National News.
Well, you sure can build up quite the appetite cheering on your favorite sports team.
It's why Scotiabank Arena has added some new mouth-watering items to the menu, just as the Raptors and Leaf seasons get underway. It's a new season, and with it, new seasonings. The fan experience at Scotiabank Arena now has a lot more spice.
We want to cater to our entire community, right? We want to keep our flair of the Caribbean background, right? So it has that little hit, but not everyone is afraid to try it, right? So it's a subtle heat, and we can cool it off with our mango and tamarind chutney.
MLSE revealed 11 new food stands at Scotiabank Arena this year, many run by some of the best local chefs and restaurants in the city. Gone are the days of just hot dogs and burgers.
We know that for every person who's going to come in and just get a hot dog, there's always going to be somebody who wants more, something different. We're also right downtown. So we are surrounded by options. We got to keep up, and we got to be setting the pace as opposed to waiting for other people to build something around us that outshines us. So we're trying to lead the pack.
Highlights include the mac and cheese burger, Thai shrimp, jalapeno cheddar sausage, and some of the finest cheeses in the world.
I would start with the grilled cheese. You get that, it's a little bit lighter, and then you could finish it with the mac and cheese. Later on in a game or later on in a concert, you start and then you have a couple drinks and then you're willing to have something a little bit on the heavier side.
Plenty of gourmet food options to choose from the next time you're in the concession stands. All right, the food does look good.
That's not a story to watch when you're hungry.
Yeah.
We're all starving at this point. But let's talk about the rain, because we've got rain coming right for the end of the week.
And it's a good night for some comfort food, I think, as that rain approaches us here in the GTA. Still a couple of hours out in most areas. Here's one more look at the satellite and radar imagery. It is coming, though, and wet weather is going to be with us into the day tomorrow. Going to be another mild one. 16 is our forecast daytime high. This is your weekend weather forecast. Still a chance of showers, gradually getting cooler, and it's going to be quite windy, especially on Saturday. So be mindful of that as you make your plans. Here's the 7-day forecast. Lots of sunshine returning for Monday, warmer temperatures through the middle of next week, but some wet weather returning to the forecast as well. Nathan and Michelle.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zarada Allman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.